Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, again, reminder on our house rules. Okay, to keep your microphone muted. Okay, for the duration of the lecture. Then you may ask a question later on after the presentation of our guest speaker, or you may type in the chat box if those are urgent questions. Okay, again, good afternoon, everyone. Today we are fortunate to have our third distinguished speaker for the ADP Design Lecture Series 2. Okay, again, as a reminder, the ADP Lecture Series is a platform to expose students to real-world learning to distinguished guest speakers, their expertise, and their expertise to their design works, practices, philosophy, research interests, and advocacies. Okay, the lecture topics are aligned to the themes and focus. The main focus is our studio project, likewise to aid and inspire students in the development of the final project. Okay, so I think without further delay, I'll just make a very quick introduction to our very distinguished guest speaker for today, Mr. John Bulcock. Mr. John Bulcock has 36 years of experience working as an architect, planner, interior designer, and landscape designer on a wide variety of projects in Europe, Turkey, India, and Southeast Asia. His experience encompasses architecture as well as architectural, master, urban, and sustainable planning. Since 1994, he has been commissioned to carry out on a variety of projects in Malaysia, India, and Southeast Asia, including residential, commercial, and institutional buildings, likewise sustainable master planning of resorts and townships. Low energy and sustainable design is central to his philosophy and approach to architecture, and he has received a number of awards for his work. Okay. He will be talking basically on the topic of green and sustainable architecture. Okay, without further ado and further delay, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Mr. John Bulcock. But I think before we do so, actually he's currently working on or has worked on a project. Probably John can probably invite everyone to get hold of your copy of your publication.
Yeah, well, thanks for plugging the book. Yeah, and thanks for the introduction. Okay, yeah, this is a book just. I didn't know you were going to put this up actually, but it's fine. This is a book just published on one of our projects. It just came from the printer beginning of September. It's available online. I'm not sure it's in the bookshops yet, but yeah. So, and it's written by a Malaysian architect. The book is written by a Malaysian architect, and I think it's very well written. So it's maybe worth a read if you are interested in our work. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. So look, I will. I'm John, guys. Thank you for inviting me. So I will turn my screen off just to help my line here. It's I'm sure we're all a bit fed up of presenting online and everything online, but that's the way it is at the moment. So no choice. But I'll just I'll put my camera on later on. But I'll turn it off while I do the presentation, if you don't mind. So we're ready, right, to start now? I'll start.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about what sustainability is for me, of course. I mean, it's a different thing for different people. And that's great, that's fine. That's the way it should be, I think. So I will start with the title, House, Office, Factory. Because no matter the scale of the project, hold on, let me just, no matter the scale of the project, whether it's, or the function of the building, we are touching people's lives as architects. This is what we do. And as we spend nearly 90%, it's unbelievable, 85 to 90% of our lives inside buildings, we better touch them in a good way, I think, as architects. So this is really, for me, the crux of sustainability. Because it's obvious, you know, zero energy buildings and low carbon is desirable. This is extremely important, of course, and we must pursue this and look further into this and practice this. But I think what is maybe missing sometimes is that some buildings have no mind or soul behind them. Well, that's what I call no mind or soul behind them. A lack of meaning behind them. Because I think without those qualities of, here is just a few: delight, joy, stimulation, meaning, it can be harmful to our psychological well-being, I think. I mean, not every building should be joyful or whatever, but it should have meaning for us. It should stimulate us into our own thinking. This is what I'm going to try and explain. Now, this slide, I could just show you this slide and I could talk about this and then we could all go home, because basically this is what sums it up, I think. Because we see number one here, this is very obvious: reduced impact on nature. So reduced energy consumption, minimal disturbance to the landscape, choice of building materials. Of course, this one we know and very important. Comfort of people, number two, thermal, lighting, acoustic, etc. Very important. These are sort of givens. But number three here, the psychological well-being of people and stimulation of people is absolutely critical to my mind if the building is going to be sustainable. So nothing can be missing here. They all must come together to create a sustainable building. And what I mean by this psychological well-being and stimulation of people is the architecture communicates to us, it talks to us, and it must do this at an individual level. It must stimulate us into our own experience, in my opinion. And throughout my life, I've been developing my philosophy of architecture, like hopefully all of us. And I have, for me, contact with nature in all its forms, which stimulates all our senses, touches all our senses, and stimulates us into our own thinking, is vital. And this is what I've been pursuing through my professional life. Just on a very practical level, having landscape around the building is critical as well. Because if we surround our buildings with hard surfaces, like we do in our cities to a large extent, we can see from this graphic here that 50% of the heat energy from the sun is stored throughout the day with the sun on the hard surfaces. And as the sun goes down, this heat irradiates back all around our buildings, all around our cities. Whereas if we have green, predominantly green around them, as you can see, only 5% is stored. This is going to be a massive effect on our energy use and our comfort in our future cities and our future buildings. So the more landscape we can actually get on a design on a practical level, never mind a psychological level, is beneficial. So of course, this talk is really about passive design. I mean, because active design, of course, we have brilliant engineers, hopefully, to actually help us with all these those active problems. But passive design must start at the inception of a project, as you're probably all aware. You're all architects, right? So you're probably there, but never mind, we can labor the point of it. And within the tropics, shade and air movement are the two main requirements, to my mind. If you have shade and you have air movement, you can be comfortable in any building. Of course, there are other aspects to passive design. We have the siting of the building, the minimizing the hard surfaces, the building form selection, all these things. Of course, we have to sort of analyze and understand and design accordingly. Maximizing natural light, low maintenance of materials. This is very important for sustainability, because the more we have to maintain things, the more materials we use, etc., etc. So it's very important to design with climate. It's critically important to design with climate. And that means not just sort of looking at a more superficial level. We really have to go into it. Each project, we cannot just start a new project, to my mind, and say, well, I understand this climate because we did it last time. You must look at the individual site, to my mind, okay? That means studying all the sun angles at any time of the day, any day of the year, for instance, like this up here, to actually understand where the sun is going to penetrate and how we want to shape that area, or let the sun in some way, or in a dappled way, whatever. So rainfall, temperatures, sun angle, I mean, all these things are critical when we're designing passively. If we don't understand these, if we don't research enough into these, the building will not be as good as it could be. Of course, we all understand the site analysis, but it's very important just to do, I find, to do a very simple, like this is a typical site analysis on one of our projects, very simple. But what we do, we always put the sun path on, as well as other features and views, whatever. But the sun path is critical because, as we know, the sun comes into the north for about 3 months in the year in Malaysia, in KL here, because we're near the equator. So that means not only do we have to deal with the south, the low sun in the east and west and the south, but we have to deal with it in the north as well. And so you can see these sort of diagrammatic arrows coming in. We have to understand where the sun is coming from. Now, Malaysia, I'm not Malaysian, as you know, but I love Malaysia. I've been here so many years, and I'm almost half Malaysian. And it's a beautiful country. It has so much to offer. But I do worry about the way things are going. And, you know, of course, we have beautiful World Heritage sites like Georgetown. But this scene here, this street scene here, although it's Georgetown, this could be any small town Malaysia, I think. You go to any small town, you have the shop houses, you have the hustle and bustle of the street market in the evening. And it is so priceless. This really is very important to Malaysian culture, as part of the culture. Then we have the natural culture, if you like, the natural environment, the flora and fauna, coming together, creating a unique sense of place, which is Malaysia. Not like anywhere else, even in the tropics, not like anywhere else. It has its own culture, and it's beautiful. But I feel that it is in danger. So we, as architects and future architects, we must be really aware of this, because so much is being lost due to the current rate of development. It's not just development, it's this type of development. So if we as architects are not going to stand up for this, then who is? If we're not going to actually lead our clients and show our clients maybe a better way to develop, then who is? Nobody will. So we have to, I think we have to really grasp this and take it further, each generation. And I'm hopeful. I hope it's happening. So back to me, my philosophy here. So in nature, as in art, we cannot be told what to think. Now, what I mean by this is, we take a very literal example. We go for a walk in a forest, and it's not on a trail. We're not deep in the forest getting lost and worried about wild animals. Just a very pleasant walk in the forest with the light coming through, and we get away from the hustle and bustle and the constant bombardment of social media, of people telling us what to do, what to think, and we get close to ourselves. I believe we do this. We get close to ourselves. We begin to think our own thoughts when we're not bombarded. It's the same in art. When we go to a gallery, we see a sculpture or a painting. If it's really come from the heart and soul of that artist, it will touch us in some way. It will be a different touch or a different meaning for you and me and the next person. And that's how it should be with art, because it should stimulate us into our own experience, what we experience, what it means to us, that piece of art, that walk in the forest, what it means to us. It's the same for architecture. We cannot, when we're experiencing architecture, we cannot be told what to think. We think our own thoughts. I think it comes automatically. That's why it's so crucial for the students, and I say this every time I talk, so crucial to actually experience good architecture, to travel and to identify projects you like and then experience them, because you can learn so much. Because nature stimulates us into our own experience, as I've just explained. Nature stimulates all our senses. And so what I mean here, architecture stimulates all our senses. Sight, sound, scent, touch, taste, to bring us closer to ourselves. For me, this is fundamental. And without this, the building cannot be sustainable. So encouraging maximum contact with nature, this is what we do with our buildings, or we attempt to do. For our psychological well-being, because living and working in natural light, contact with greenery and the sky condition throughout the day brings stimulation, joy, improves mental health, as well as productivity. And don't just take my word for that. There are studies now on this, scientific studies, that contact with nature actually is beneficial for our mental health, productivity, etc. I mean, there are doctors who are actually prescribing, getting away into nature for health problems now, which, just 10, 15 years ago, this wasn't. But now it's universally recognized, I think. And I think it's correct. Because, some people, I mean, I visit some buildings, some factories when we go and do some research. There are people working in 8 hours. No daylight, no contact with the outside world. They go in the morning and they come out. This is soul destroying. You do this month after month, year after year, it is soul destroying. And we should not be designing buildings this way. This is not sustainable, this type of building, to my mind. It's very harmful. So in nature, you think about this. In nature, everything has reason. Everything can be explained. Because, why the moss grows on one side of the trunk, not the other side, why a plant grows on one side of the mountain, not on the other side. There is an honesty in this. It looks chaotic. Nature looks chaotic, but it is completely ordered. It doesn't lie to us, and nor should our buildings. They must be honest, in my opinion. A building that is dressed up is a bit like a person putting tons of makeup on their face. You can't see their face. You can't see the real them. This is how I think about buildings which are dressed up, completely covered, and then what the facade is not what you see, is not what the building is about. Okay, and we actually like to express the structure and materials. So structure and materials are expressed. The building explains to us what it is made of, and how it is put together. For me, this is very important in a building. When I visit works around the world, this is what touches me when I see things like this. And of course, it's the space that is the main element, but it's all part of the architecture. Okay, just let me explain this just for a moment here. This is Viollet-le-Duc, who was if you don't know, he was a French architect philosopher, I think 19th century, I can't remember, but something like that. But he's worth reading if you haven't read any of his writings. But I just want to emphasize this little passage here, because he says, the lilies of the field, the leaves of the trees, the insects have style because they grow, develop, and exist according to essentially logical laws, as we just talked about the tree and the moss and that. We can spare nothing from a flower because in its organization, every part has its function and is formed to carry out that function in the most beautiful manner. In other words, nothing is superfluous. You have a beautiful flower, a beautiful pet, but everything is needed there. Nothing is not needed. And I think this sort of sums up really how architecture is as well. This is why I believe this is a close connection with architecture art and nature. So the essence of architecture is not about aesthetics for me. It's about space and how we as individuals react and relate to space. This is fundamental for me. So buildings must belong to their climate, to belong to their culture, to belong to their architecture. Because if they don't belong to their climate, what are they? No, they don't belong to this place. It's as simple as that. And I think if you just remember, this quote is very important in my life. We shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. For me, nothing could be truer than this. And I like this by Frank Lloyd Wright as well. There's a similarity of vision in creation between music and architecture. Only the nature of the materials differ. And I could say, I could put in nature, substitute nature for music here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run through quickly of 2 houses very fast, and an office and a factory. So just to give an idea how we put this philosophy into practice. Now, this is a little house actually in Sri Lanka. The other 3 are in Malaysia, but this one is in Sri Lanka, and it's in the country. It's in a very remote area. So I wanted to have one house which is in the remote and one in the city. The next house in KL is in the city. So you can see, actually, it's a little resort, but it's very tiny. So it's more like a house, single story. But what it is, it's sort of dug into the slope. This is actually a slope coming down to the bottom of the screen here towards the sea. It's on a promontory, so it looks overlooked about 10 meters higher than the sea or so, in the southern tip of Sri Lanka, in this coconut grove. And as you can see here, the spaces are basically disbanded, if you like, or separated. You know, they have courtyards between the spaces. They are separated by nature. So whichever way you look out, you have this contact with nature. And as we come down the hill, this is what we see. It's a very low-key house, but actually we enter through the roof. So we actually walk down the hill because the car remains at the top, and we have to walk down the hill. And then we come onto the roof, and then we come down into the, I call the tunnel here. It's a tunnel, which is this, if you can see my cursor, it's this little part here. So we come down, so it's almost like the roof sort of lifts up and lets us enter the house. This is taken at night, but in the daytime, the light filtering through these perforated bricks is very beautiful. And then we come down into the main body of the house, and this is the view we have. There are no walls in this house except for the bedrooms, of course. And it's designed to be as close to contact to nature as it possibly can be, really, in a practical sense, that we also need comfortable living. And then you can see the sea. This is when we get our first view of the sea. When we come down to this level here, we can actually see out to the sea here. Materials, off from concrete and fair face brick, very, some people say not so sustainable, but to me, they are in the sense that they very minimal maintenance, no finishes. So we don't use lots of finishes on it, and then paint and all this, or plaster and paint and this sort of thing. But we can talk about this maybe in the Q&A. I'm sure you've got some questions on this later. So I'll just run through quite quickly some images of this house so you can get an idea. Courtyards, these were taken quite early, but now we sort of have trees growing up through these courtyards. We had existing trees that we actually tried to keep as well, wherever possible, and creating courtyards in the roof. This is the side of the house, coming down the hill where the car's left at the top there. You come down, as you can see, the 3 bedrooms in a row are actually stepping down. So the smallest bedroom has a low floor to ceiling, and it gets larger as it comes down. So making use of the site, we like to do things like that to really, for the benefit of the project. And then inside one of the bedrooms, and this is the courtyard, open to sky courtyard here. So if you can open this all up, this side and this side, or for security, you can keep this one locked and this one open, so we get some breeze through these slot windows here. And the bathrooms are all open. A view to the sort of front of the building, which is facing the sea. And then on the roof garden, you look from the air, you can hardly see this building. What we did, because we didn't want to cut any of the trees, we actually created this sort of lookout here at the bottom here. You can actually step up, so you can actually go have a look out and see the sunset. And then these now have sort of trees coming up through it all. So now it has really grown over. Okay, the next house is a small house in KL, LPJ actually. But again, it's a small house. It's a sort of unassuming, from the road, you hardly know it's there actually. It's a single story, except for we come down at the back to the pool at the back, the lower land at the back, but no accommodation down there other than the pool. So we enter and we have this open-sided but covered walkway skirting the courtyard. So we have a courtyard in the center of the house, open-sided, leading up to the main sort of entertainment deck here. So this is all open, and the living area and the dining area can all open. I mean, it can close up if they do want to use some aircon, but basically it's not really necessary, to be honest, with the use of fans. So basically we get this entertainment deck here with the other accommodations and bedrooms around here. So you can see with this section here, this is the roof to the walkway around here, and then it slices through the main roof to become like this sort of sun scoop. So this is the house, this is the courtyard, from the courtyard, and there were existing trees. These trees at the back are not in the site, but I wanted to bring it into the experience of the house. And so we get this green backdrop to this living and entertainment deck here. So one way we look to the courtyard, and then we have the trees the other side here. Very simple, very open, low maintenance materials. So the walkway skirting the courtyard, they use this for entertaining, having dinner out here in the evenings, bringing tables out, and things like that. And we have this linear water body fronting the courtyard. If I just go back here, we have this water body in front of it. So it's sort of, the deck is a bit higher. We have to step up on this bridge over the water here onto the deck, and then we have the water separating it just to give it that slight separation from the rest of the house. Slightly higher, and we have to cross the water. Now these are, one thing I like to do is to bring us closer to this climate, is to express how we deal with rainwater. We do this on just about all our projects. Sometimes it's these slots, sometimes it's these spouts, sometimes we do slots in the roof. And what it is when we get these fantastic tropical storms here, there's so much water, and is directed towards these spouts. We get these fantastic displays of water, like fountains upside down, coming crashing down. So, and the sense of the water, the smell, the sound is really amazing. You know, when I was first in Malaysia, I remember going to a coffee shop, just with timber shack with a corrugated roof, and just sitting there, and suddenly there was a massive storm, and then all these rivulets of water ran off the corrugations in these little streams. Of course, they were quite big streams as the storm got worse. And I was just amazed by this experience. I'd never experienced this before. Sitting there with your hot cup of coffee, about a meter away from all this water just crashing down to the ground. You know, that was quite common in those days, I think, 20, 30 years ago when I first came. And I thought, wow, this is just so beautiful. The scent of the water, you could smell the rain and the sound of it was hitting the concrete floor. And of course, there was no drain to catch or anything, but it didn't matter. It was just sort of running away. So this really informed me about this climate. And so that's what we try and do with our projects as well, with all of them, big and small. We try and actually make some sort of play of the water here. It's very practical as well, because we don't have gutters that get blocked and form, get full of mosquitoes, etc., etc. And then, yeah, perforated brick walls we like to use because we get the breeze through. We like them. And then this is actually the entrance. So actually this is the front door across here. So when the door's closed, we have the big timber door here. So, you know, this is, I like these sort of spaces. This inside, outside, you get a glimpse through to into the courtyard here. And a night view. And then the bedroom, or one of the bedrooms, you should see completely opens up to the water garden here. And it's private, you know, when you can shut this door, you can be private and the water becomes part of your bedroom. And if it's raining, it's fine as well, because the water just comes off this spouts and comes down here and is an experience. And then you can see down to the pool, at the lower level, we come down this way here, where you normally create roof gardens, because we like to keep them green, the roofs, as well as it creates extra space for you know, for clients to use. And then the way down from the long deck down to the pool area. Okay, this is an office. It's some production and office in Penang. So this is actually Penang Airport, the runway, as you can see at the top right here. The runway is over where I'm pointing out now. This is the runway, and this is the taxiway. When the planes have landed, they come around, they come back this way here. And when we first visited the site, I was totally amazed that this is so exciting, seeing the planes land, take off, taxiing. So I thought this must be the main view for the house, because the other way is like a main road going to the airport with all the factories. This is in the free trade zone, so you know what it's like. I'm sure many of you, it's all just factory after factory after factory on the main road. So we actually turned the building around to look at the runways, the main view here. Of course, we have our green roof again and green space sort of against the boundary here. But if, you know, we checked around, all the other buildings, both sides had they all turned their back on it. They all turned their back on the runway. And I was just wondering why they do that. Why do you do that when you have such an interest for people to actually, because this is an office and factory just like the rest. So there's no reason why you cannot let people experience this type of thing, you know? Rather than sitting, you know, in an enclosed box somewhere deep in the building. So this type of thing, I find very stimulating, psychologically stimulating, and interest, and people like it, and they want to be here. They want to experience these places. It makes their working day I believe, it adds to their working day. This type of experience. So a plan. This is just one of the plans. So the runway is at the top here. And as you can see, I'll just go back. This is the only open facade. The rest is fairly solid, you'll see. But this one is open, double glaze, recessed glass, looking out to the runway. But what we did, because we wanted, these are sort of open plan offices, you can see through because it's all full height glass here and here. You can see actually through, or you can get borrowed light from the atrium here. So the atrium is a triple height space between the two elements of the building here. It's one building, but it's two sides. And this space is basically a circulation space, but it becomes much more than that. It's not air conditioned, it's naturally ventilated, as many spaces as possible are just naturally ventilated, like in all the works I'm showing you. Because it becomes a usable space for them to use. They have meetings here, they have yoga here, dance here, films here, AGMs here, in this space here. And so rather than creating a big air-conditioned sort of hall somewhere, taking up a lot of space and material, we try and get this dual function or multi-function, let's call it, spaces in our buildings as much as possible. And then we also try and get frame views. And so these people, okay, they get a lot of natural light in, but they don't get maybe the best view, but they can take their cup of coffee or their computer or whatever, and they can sit in these little breakout spaces all around the facade here, which maybe frame a view to the airport or to the green hill behind, etc., all the way around. So this is the atrium space. Naturally ventilated. It has around the top of the building, we have these glass louvers that ventilate space out. We have two huge fans, two big ass fans within the space. Keeps it cool. Insulated roof, of course, always in, and then we have the canopy outside that actually shades from the sun here. So this is a circulated space, so people can. The reason there's no furniture because they only bring in furniture when they've got a function. The rest of the time they use it, as I say, for all sorts of other things like dance or yoga and lots of staff activities. Yeah. But they can. This is also just a space they can come and sit, and talk, or sit on their own with their laptop, take their cup of coffee if they want to get out of the office for 15 minutes. So we like to create these type of spaces as well. And this is how it looks from the other way, looking back. You can see the green hill behind. And this is how we told the client it would work, and it does pretty much work like this one. And then we have these, because these ones are actually laboratories, so we want some natural light, but we don't want to have a lot of natural light in there for obvious reasons. So we actually just create these sort of north-looking brick fins expanding out. And then from the main office, as I said, looking through the glass, sometimes we have perimeter offices, sometimes not, but where we have perimeter offices, they're all full glass. So you can actually see out to the runway wherever you are. Right, this is the road elevation. So it's pretty unassuming, pretty solid. The perforated bricks for these naturally ventilated toilets and store, whatever spaces that we've got here. Again, bringing rainwater down. Here we couldn't just let it free fall. We had to actually, because it would just be a bit messy. So here we had to still see the water spurting off the roof here, but caught in a hopper and then brought down and then into a catchment area in the bottom here. Just so the last sort of few meters, we let free fall down. Again, just expressing the rainfall with and then the canopy, the large canopy shading the whole area. Yeah. And then, so these would be some of the breakout spaces looking to the runway, these ones here. And then I think this is the fire escape. Yeah, this is the fire escape, which is naturally ventilated. And we can use it to go to the rooftop as well. And inside the fire escape, so you can begin to sort of see sort of the magical displays of light that we get. And then the open facade to the runway like this. And then the breakout spaces looking out this way as well. So this is a building that, you know, it could have been a box where nobody saw anything, like many, you know, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can people enjoy working here. The functions. I mean, obviously this must come from the client. The client is great. Like any good building needs a good client. So I'll move on. Yeah. So this one is Factory in the Forest. This is the book that was introduced at the beginning there. So I'll show a few slides of this one as well. This one was another great client who was really willing to go for something which is not conventional. Right? But basically, in terms of energy efficiency, he wanted it just to be completely, I mean, as energy efficient as possible. And then, of course, we need good engineers for that. But we start off with the passive, get the passive design right. So this was a competition, and basically the competition that we won was the building we built. It hardly changed at all within the development stage. And so this is the site, this red one here. It's in this Penang Science Park, which is on the mainland, just across the bridge, second bridge there. And it has been totally wrecked by the developer, this piece of land. It was flattened, no features left, the trees gone. Anything left was this bit of the estuary into the sea here, a bit of river, I guess you can call it. But you can hardly see it anyway. But there was a reason, but it was important because this is the why I orientated the boardroom, which we'll see later, this big box that cantilevers out towards this one to get a glimpse of the river here, because there's nothing else really on this area. It's totally sort of barren. But as we know, any site can be interesting. There's no such thing as a bad site, you know. So it depends on your imagination what you can do with it, essentially. So, but because it was sort of, this is the site, by the way, this one here. You know, they tend to be a bit soulless, these sort of parks, these industrial parks. So we wanted really to enliven this place, to see, to make it a joy for people to come to work, look forward to come to work, because you have to travel actually here. You know, if you're coming from the island, like, because their previous factory, old factories on the island, so a lot of the staff were going to have to come over from the island, which, you know, is a bit of a pain for them to get in the traffic. So they really had to have something. What we thought, we started off thinking, you know, what could they've got to sort of want to come to work here. It can't just be another box that then they go in and come out at 8 hours later. So we told the client that, you know, forests are critical, not only, I mean, they are critical basically for everything, as we know. For the macroclimate, the microclimate, they are critical. So we wanted a forest to be the face of the building. So then this is what the building would project. And not just for a few staff, like their directors or office staff, but all the staff, even the workers on the line or whatever, the cleaner doing whatever. We wanted all the staff to have this sort of experience. And so this is the ground floor plan. So what we did, of course, we needed a lot of car parking as usual. And so we created, we started the forest at the car park here. So basically it becomes a forest, not a car park. This is the way we approached it. And that forest would then step up over the building. I don't know, you can see this little section here, but it can step up over the building on roof gardens, step down into a courtyard on the ground again, and then sort of surround the building as well. So this was our intention here. Underneath the offices are first and second floor above here. Of course, not much natural light getting through there. So actually we made this into a hard surface area, which the employees could then use, sit around the series of steps, water catchment, so the rainwater would go into these pools and then disperse slowly after the rainfall into drains, into harvesting tanks, things like that. And then the lobby, this is the lobby, the triple height glass lobby was in the middle of it all here. So you'll see some slides a bit later, so just giving you an idea of the layout of it. And then the office staff enter this way to the lobby, and the factory staff, the buses come here and they come along this covered walkway and into their locker room and then into the production. Yeah. Essentially, that's what it is. And there also is some office staff in here who are related to the production here, but most of the office staff are above here in the office at the front. Cafeteria here, again, next to the courtyard, it expands out into it. So actually, wherever you are, you have this contact with nature, the sides and this front here. The next level up was, I won't show you all the levels, but I'll just explain this one a little bit. This is the first floor. So you can see what we did with, we created a platform, put the offices on it. And the idea was that these offices could then, in the future, they could expand out another office here, another office at the side here, whatever, things like that. That was the idea. All around this central foyer here with the connection to there's a lift and a staircase connection to the production. Oh, I did show this. Okay, this is the second floor with the boardroom. So this is the cantilever box, which actually is orientated towards the river, as I mentioned a bit earlier. And then we have all these roof gardens as well. So this is after a couple of years, after it started to grow. It grew so fast here, you can put in, what's another thing that's so beautiful about working in the tropics in Malaysia is that you can actually put in a lot of small landscape, and in 2 years, you've got a lot of big landscape, basically. But this one, You can see here that we've got minimal hard surfaces. We've got grasscrete for the roads and car park spaces. Car parks, cars are shaded by the big canopy, overhead canopy, which shades the office building and the courtyard behind as well. Now this was taken on the month we opened, same month. So the landscape was just planted. As you can see, it's not much of a forest, but you can see these tree belts running through the car park right place. So what we did to get some sort of immediate effect, which I think you can see there is some sort of immediate effect already. We haven't just got 1 tree or 2 trees within these. We've got about 8 or 9 or 10 sometimes, depending on the length of these planting beds here of trees. And they're very small, they're not expensive, maybe 100 ringgit each or something like that, or less or a bit more, whatever this species is. So we plant a lot, as well as on the ground cover as well. These are very cheap, 2 ringgit each or something like that. So you plant a lot of it immediately. And then as it grows, you can see this was after a couple of years or so, maybe 2.5 years. It grows so fast, we begin to prune out. So at the moment, we are actually beginning to prune out because we've lost the drama of the box at the moment because it's covered with planting. So I'm just talking to the client now actually about how we're going to start to prune out some of these trees. Not too many, but we want to actually see the building a little bit more. But that was the idea anyway, to prune out as the trees need more room because they're very close together. This is an early shot again, with the month we opened. You can see here, we got how many trees in this planting bed. And now it's just a jungle, basically. But here you can see the triple height foyer and the canopy shading everything. So getting the passive design right from the beginning is crucial. And you can clearly see the cantilever box here. And car park, I'll run through these pretty quick. I've got a number of slides here. So just to give you a visual impression of the project. This is the way the production staff come in off the buses under this roof here. But what they do, they really do use the courtyard, the staff. They like to, in their break time, they come, for instance, this is the entrance, ground floor, and the drop-off area over here. But behind you can see the courtyard and the link bridge, what we call the link bridge, the link between the office and the production here. And they use all these spaces. This one is the foyer with our cantilever staircase in, getting a lot of natural light down in the center here. Shaded by the canopy as well as by all the landscape. So as you come up through, you start to experience the roof gardens like this, and the staff are encouraged to go out. This is the way it's designed. So you can actually have meetings outside, take your clients outside, customers. You can go out by yourself and contemplate, or have your cup of coffee, you work with your laptop or small, whatever. You can have, it's designed to be used. So what we've done, we've got places to sit all the way around. And this is typical office on the roof garden. Also, to strengthen the connection between the forest and there's so many species out there, there are already thousands, but to strengthen this connection, every room we named after one of the plants here in the forest here. And then we drew them. The architects drew these and then put some sort of more stylized about their flowers or whatever they are. And then a bit of scientific info about it. So each room, and then we printed it. So this was part of the ID for the project, but it was to strengthen the connection to the outside. This is some of our drawings. Then in the office, because we do have some perimeter offices in places, although it's full height glass, we wanted to get a bit more light into the center of these offices. So this is the roof garden first floor, this is roof garden second floor, as you can see, and the canopy. And so what we did, we created these light wells, and then we made them into benches. And so actually, it's actually where you can encourage you to come out, you can sit here, sit around the planter box like this, and just walk around the gardens, essentially. We've got them everywhere. We've got on the courtyard, on the roof gardens, all around the site. We have these places to where people can actually just sit on these roof gardens. For the production, we've got this sort of sawtooth roof, which lets natural light, or north facing, which lets natural light right across the factory floor, saving an enormous amount of electricity on artificial lighting. And not only that, psychologically, people are working in natural light as well as the connection to the greenery, to the sides and to the courtyard here. We have this natural light right across the floor like this. These are the spouts, rainwater spouts. There's a massive amount of water, of course, on this roof, which actually spill out when it rains into huge, tremendous fountains. And then from the office, smaller ones, which actually then fall down and then fall down to the ground. Occasionally we use change, but not often. This is just because we don't want to splash around where people are walking. And we encourage the client, and they do, to keep it pretty wild. We like it's not supposed to be a manicured garden. It's supposed to be some sort of forest. So it's really yeah, it's pretty wild. The link bridge, underneath the link bridge, we've got seats, and this is that hard area underneath here, the hard scape area where the water is gathered, where they also gather as well. This is an early one. Some of these are early, some are late, late after a couple of years. And then the link bridge itself. So the link bridge is primarily circulation, naturally ventilated. In fact, it's open at the bottom. But the sides, to stop the rain sort of coming into the staircase, we have glass louvers all the way along. But also we made it into a space that it wasn't asked for by the client, but actually becomes like a lecture theatre or a meeting space. Again, it's just another space to use. And out to the cafe. From the cafeteria, can go in and out as they please, and sit, because this is shaded, remember, by the huge canopy overhead. And then I mentioned the rainwater. So these are the spouts from the factory. This is from the office. This is from the roof garden, just small ones. Something like this. So from the factory, we get these cascading elements here. And then from the office, we come down to the ground, something like this. Again, to strengthen this connection to the climate and these storms. I got some rather bad photos here, but it's the best I got, unfortunately. So you can see here how it's from the factory roof, how it is actually falling, and then just more gentle from the roof gardens. Working in the factory, wherever you are, you can see right through to the courtyard here, right from the back, right to the front here into the courtyard. This is after a little longer. It's grown up a bit, and people sitting out in the cafeteria here. And here you can see the natural light coming through, right across the factory floor. So these lights, they're actually on a solar control. And so if they don't need it, if there's enough natural light, enough lux at whatever level here, they actually dim down, saving energy. The building itself has many technical features. I'm not going to go into those now, but it is extremely low energy. We have under floor cooling, slab cooling here. There's about 60, 70 kilometers of pipes in this building, the office and the production here. We're actually connected to a chiller, and we put chilled water through, which cools down the whole concrete structure. It becomes like a cool sink, if you like, the whole structure, which means the conventional air conditioning up here is much reduced, much reduced, because we have this cooling of the whole structure, basically. And even this air conditioning, the more conventional air conditioning, goes through heat exchange, and we save energy and water, cool air, etc., etc. The sides of the factory, which I haven't really talked about yet, all down the sides, we have these concrete fins, these freestanding concrete fins like this, which block the low east and west sun in it. So what that does, it enables us to have this full height glazing along the perimeter, and also shaded with this bit of canopy overhead here. But what this does, it gives us this connection all down the factory facade, this connection. So even at the back of the factory, you have this connection out to the forest which surrounds the building here. Outside, it looks something like this. You can see the fins here and the glazing, full height glazing. So this doesn't get direct sun on it. And we did this around the service area as well, taking it around just to shade the service area. It's won quite a lot of awards, this building, and this was our team. And so, thank you, that's my talk. So I shall stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, John, for a very inspiring presentation, showing your advocacy and your works in sustainable and green architecture. I'm sure the students have been inspired with all those beautiful designs and architecture that we have shared today. Guys, feel free to ask. Probably we can start off the Q&A portion, John, if you're okay.
Yes, fine.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Eric?
Hi, John. Thank you for a stimulating and passionate talk. I'm sure the students enjoyed that very much. I have a hypothetical question. If a developer were to engage an architect to build a really green building, but this requires the architect to raise down acres of virgin landscape or forest, how do you advise to approach this? On one hand, you are supposed to build a green building, but it requires taking down acres of virgin forest. So, yeah, sorry for the...
Right, well, let me just turn this off because I think my bandwidth is not so good, but I'll turn it on again a bit later on. You need to take down the forest because the building is so vast, is it? I mean, is that something like that is what you're talking about, is it?
Yeah, something like that. Let's say, for instance, the site is in a forest. It has forests everywhere.
I mean, we shouldn't be building in virgin forests, to be honest. We have enough land.
Correct.
But, okay, I know that's not your question. Your question is, what do they insist on it? Well, yeah. we would question the client. Why is this the best thing you can do? What we find is, and we find this in large and small projects, that a client has bought a site because they've got a beautiful, they've got, some nice trees on the site or whatever like that. But sometimes you can't keep those trees. It's true. We always try and keep trees, of course, we do. But sometimes it's not possible. And convincing them, actually, it's okay. These trees aren't that great anyway. We can actually plant 100 more, and in no time, you're going to have, a much nicer view of these. This is a bit off the point, but I'll come back to your point in a minute. But it is connected in a way. So I would say to that client, I mean, do you need to build here? Now, because what is it you want about this place? Is it because it's in the forest? Or is it close to some logistics that is important to you? I mean, you've got to find out all the details first. And quite often you'll find, I would suspect, that it's because they like the forest. They want to be sort of in the forest, even though they're going to cut down half of it, whatever. So yeah. I would convince them, you go to a more, maybe a secondary forest or even a brownfield, and we can make that forest for you. We can actually create that forest for you in no time. In 2 or 3 years, it will just be amazing. And it's hard to convince people of this. We've had this, as I mentioned, in 1 or 2 projects. So if we can't convince them to do that, yes, it's a tricky.
Turn down jobs would you turn down jobs if the client insists on something that you do not believe in?
Yes, we turn down jobs for sure. We turn down jobs because there is no point working with a client who doesn't understand what we're trying to do. It doesn't happen so often because generally clients come to us because they've seen our work, but it has happened for sure. Yeah, where we've turned down jobs. So I would, if I can't convince that client, and I really believe that this is the wrong thing to do, yeah, you have to be prepared to do that. It's hard perhaps, but you have to be prepared for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Eric, for the question. Liu has a question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi, Liu.
John, commendable work. I love your passion. It's been a long while since I've seen you. I'm glad you have all these buildings, all these exceptional buildings to share with us. My question is, I think for the benefit of the students, I noticed all the sites you've shown are green sites. So what would you do in an urban environment? Like you are surrounded by buildings and you're surrounded by tall buildings, short buildings, and that's going to affect the micro site because of the sun, maybe because of the wind. How would you tackle it, John?
Okay, thanks for your comments, Leo. Good to see you again as well. Yeah. Well, like we'll tackle any site. We study the site. I mean, we do work in urban environments all the time, of course. I don't see any difference really. I mean, the sites I've shown are all green because of, apart from the coconut house in Sri Lanka, the rest of them were not green at all. Those sites, you know, you saw an image of the factory in the forest site before we started work. I mean, it's just a flat, dead area, really, you know, for want of a better phrase. So, but anyway, if it's in the city centre with tall buildings around, great. We have no issue with this. But what we would do is our philosophy would come through. We don't, when I say contact with nature, it doesn't necessarily mean everything is to be landscape and green. It doesn't mean that. It might mean that, but it doesn't automatically mean that. It might be natural light. It might be a view. It might be whatever. I mean, many things that I can't think of right now. Okay, it might be a view. Maybe it's just one tree or something like that. But the scent, you know, of plants can be any of these things. So it doesn't. We don't necessarily have to create forests for. We don't create forests for all our work, as you see in these couple of projects I've shown you. We don't do that. But we do think having landscape around the building is very important for the reasons I've outlined in the talk. So we do use landscape as much as possible to keep cooler and psychological reasons. But it needn't necessarily be that. We actually use materials to shade as well, and you know, other materials to shade. And if it's a tall building, I mean, I would love to design this a high-rise building, the central KL. Really, I would love it. And some time ago, I did when I worked for the company, actually. But and for us, the philosophy doesn't change. That's the point. The architectural philosophy shouldn't change from project to project. People see, for instance, I'll give you a quick example. People see some of our work. So you can take the long deck house, like I just showed you, for instance, and then they look at the cantilever house, which is a steel structure, cantilevering and all sorts. But and they say this looks like a different architect, and I say no. You look more carefully. And when you do, you'll see that it actually is a very passive house with natural ventilation. The structure is expressed. It happens to be a different type of structure, but actually the philosophy is still running through. It has roof gardens as well, actually. So it doesn't really matter. You have your philosophy. You cannot divert from your philosophy. You can evolve it, of course, as you get more older and more experienced and better. hopefully as architects, as we all hopefully do as we grow older. But your philosophy, you just don't throw it out the window because you've got a different type of site. Absolutely not. We use our philosophy and we see what the benefits of that site what benefits we can make for the building on that particular site, the one you've outlined, for instance. So it would be the same approach. That's the way. That's my answer. It would be the same.
Right. I think your philosophy underpins your approach. If I
Yes.
could say that.
Yes.
I quite like the way you refer to the masters. I mean, I was looking at some of your buildings that refers to Corbusier and Louis Kahn brutalism, in a subtle way. You made it your own, but I can see some
definitely.
representation.
They're my heroes. These are my heroes.
Yeah, I was trying to impress my students on these old timers like Louis Kahn and like Corbusier, but I can't get it across. So I would like you to instill some of this philosophy into them. I saw your spots, and I saw the Louis Kahn Salt Institute that you implemented in your schemes. So it's not so obvious, but it's there. So your referencing is there. Is it true?
Yeah, and Laurie Baker in India. I don't know. You should check Laurie Baker out in India. His beautiful brickwork. I was knocked out when I went there. This is what I mean about traveling. Okay, we don't copy, but we definitely were influenced by these. I mean, Louis Kahn influenced by Corbusier. Everyone is influenced, right? But then we take it and make it our own. I think that's what a good architect will do. I'm not saying I'm a good architect. I'm just saying that's what a good architect should do, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Yeah, we have a lot of questions from the students. I think the first question is from Jai. John, you can see the chat box, right?
Oh.
What's the depth of the growing mediums on the rooftop of the factory in the forest? What happens if the trees get larger over time in the future? Will it collapse or will they collapse? And because of the shaded spaces and humid environment created by the greeneries, would there be a lot of mosquitoes and insects?
Okay, I can see it now. Well, the depth, it varies. It depends. Where we have trees, of course, we go to about 600 minimum, something like that. But we have root barriers all around everything. Anywhere, even on the ground, the car park, trees, the tree belts, everywhere we have root barriers. And of course, we do on the roof gardens as well. And I think what you'll find, I'm no expert, but I think what you'll find is that actually trees will grow in relation to their environment. And so if they are a bit restricted, you don't get huge trees, right? And so because they only have maybe 600 or 700 soil and the width maybe 1 meter, they don't grow into big trees. So they actually sort of look after themselves. I hope we don't have future problems. I sincerely hope not. We're not anticipating any, but we do take those precautions. The root barriers everywhere, and you choose your species as well. You don't put huge trees in positions that don't, would be not practical. So we do use when they're on roof gardens like that, we do use specify smaller trees, and we work with our landscape contractor, to be honest. Contractors that we find are very knowledgeable about their plants, and they know what will grow where and so we use them a lot. We explain spatially what we're trying to achieve with the landscape, and also in terms of shading and things like that. And then we listen to them, and they suggest this plant, that plant, and we think this is a good one and that one. So it works like that, really. And in terms of mosquitoes, no, we don't get a lot of mosquitoes. We do plant certain species to keep them away on some projects where we have, but the factory in the forest, we don't have a problem there with mosquitoes, actually. As far as I know, we don't anyway. they've not been told that. Some projects, yet of course, you do get mosquitoes, and we plant, but you can't do much about that, to be honest. You're in the tropics, so if you want to cut, like if it's a domestic project and you want to come out onto the terrace at night, we encourage that, and with a fan. Then you can plant plants around it, or you can have some other device that you burn or something like that. Because we're not magicians. We love this climate, and we like to get people out into this lush landscape of Malaysia. And yeah, so don't be afraid just because people are complaining about mosquitoes. You can deal with it to a certain extent, I think.
Thanks, John. I think one more question. Hi, sir. Thank you for the inspiring talk from Jesse. I'm just curious about the coconut tree house. The layout of the house is quite open. It's so open. Is there any rainwater issues?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, when I was putting the slides together yesterday, I was thinking, I wonder whether we do have any rainwater issues here. I hadn't looked at these slides for a while. And because like in the long deck house, you may have noticed we have rain screens and wind screens that can come down, automatically come down. They sense the rain and they actually come down, motorized they are. I don't know if you noticed that, or around their long deck area. So I was thinking, we don't have that at the coconut house, but it's not been brought to my attention that it is a problem there. With the times I've been there when it's rained, you may have to move in a bit from the sides. That's what I would say. Of course, I mean, it's sort of practical, but the floors are all concrete, polished concrete. They can get wet. They can just get wet, and you just move in and you choose your furniture. And a house like that, open-sided, of course, it's more a resort house. So you can do things like that. You choose your furniture and finishes accordingly. But it's fine, I think, because the experience you get from it is worth it, in my opinion, right, having open up doors and things like that. Of course, in the city, you have to open up doors and things like that generally. But yeah, I don't know whether we have an issue. I don't think we do. I've not been told it. And when I was there, we didn't, basically. You just move in a bit, that's all. If it's really heavy rain, if it splashes in a bit. But, it's quite deep is the living area. So we've never, as far as I know, had any issues with it. But it's a good question.
Yeah, one more question, John. I think a few more. Thank you for the amazing presentation. This comes from Erin Kong. Would like to ask, what are some of the most important consideration construction-wise when you're designing buildings or structures with an abundant greenery? Examples: roof openings, materials and finishes, and the like. Also, perhaps, what are the major challenges when designing such buildings?
The main challenge, I would say, is not the designing. Of course, it has to be detailed properly, and is constructing properly. If we've ever had any problems, it's because there's been a break in the waterproofing has failed, or to be honest, it hasn't happened too often, thank God. But that is the main challenge, and that means you have to supervise. You really do have to, well, of course, specify first and get the best materials. I mean, when we first started doing it, the waterproofing we were specifying was not up to it, but we soon learned that. So now we insist that we have really high quality waterproofing, of course, drainage as well, underneath the roof garden. But of course, you have to construct the concrete properly as well. I mean, we don't like to have construction joints unless it's absolutely necessary, things like that, right? We like to do it all in one go. Generally for domestic, you can do that. Sometimes in the bigger projects, no, of course. But yeah, so I would say the constructions, that means supervising. You have to supervise as an architect. You design it, you supervise it, because nobody else will, okay? That means you have to go to site more often than you're paid for, all right? So you don't, but if you believe in the project, you don't care. You just got to make sure that you do it properly, okay? So regarding designing, it's Yeah, I think with experience we get better at this. I hope we've done it. We've designed these roof gardens quite a lot now over the years, 20 years or so. So you have to get the fall right, specify the correct waterproofing, that is critical. Root barriers, as I mentioned earlier, all these things you specify correctly. But if you do that, then you supervise. And a lot. I mean, like factory in the forest, I was on site 2 days a week, sometimes 3, sometimes more. You know, especially the last few months, it was, you just have to do it to get things right. And, you know, architecture is not a job, it's a vocation of life, it's a life, right? I think probably a lot of us will share that view. Yeah. So you do what's necessary. Okay.
Thanks, John. Question I think from Tyson, right? Wonderful work indeed. May I know how did you create the texturing for the columns in the long deck house?
Yeah. Okay. Somebody got a good eye there.
Yeah.
Yes. I like that question because I like those columns, because what we do, we create. Of course, it's in the formwork. So what we do, we create these sort of 1 inch by 1 inch strips of timber, and then make what we call a yoke. A yoke is like a frame for the, to the right diameter of the column, less the 1 inch. And then we have these frames spaced out, I can't remember, maybe every 2 feet or 3 feet, whatever necessary. And we do it in 2 halves. Actually, it would be good to, I got lots of photos of this actually. It would be interesting to put some in the construction one. So and then you put the formwork with the rebar and the formwork that goes up, and then you sort of tie it together or lock it together, the 2 halves. And it's designed to be a rough. It's designed that way. And I like it because the way it catches the light and is beautiful. You know, it's a bit jagged here, not jagged, but it's a bit not so even here. So where you get the joins together, you get a bit of spillage out, things like that. I say leave it. We just leave it. And I like to do things like that. But I'm glad you like the texture of it. Yeah, and notice that, because these things are important to creating architecture. To my mind, they are. But good question. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have a few more, John, if you're okay. From Maria, hello, sir. Thank you, sir, for the informative lecture. In the beginning of the lecture, you mentioned that sustainability requires low maintenance. If we want to involve water features in our building, what can we do to avoid high maintenance costs, such as the long deck house that you showed, if it rains heavily? How will it not affect the house? Maybe we need more cleaning. Okay, time for cleaning. Thank you.
Do you mean because the water may splash in? Is that what she means?
I think the last part. Yeah. Last part of the question.
Well, we do have rain screens on that, and so even if the client is not home, we have a sensor that actually sends all the screens down to stop the majority of rain coming in. But some does come in, yeah, sure. But we've designed the flooring, the decking there with a small gap, and so the water, hopefully, any excess water, if there's a lot of water, it will run down for sure, down between the boards, and then it runs out and through weep holes. Because underneath we have it laid to falls, the concrete slab laid to falls. But of course, that does leave some water on the top. Yeah, you may have to mop it a bit occasionally, I guess. Yeah, I think I've seen her do that once or twice. But again, to my mind, these are a small price to pay for living out in this climate, and having outdoor spaces. Of course, you're always going to have something. You're always going to have to do something. If you don't, I mean, some client, they don't want to do anything, and which is amazing. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced this as architects. They don't mind spending 10,000 ringgit servicing their Mercedes or their BM, but they will not have any maintenance involved in their bungalows. It's ridiculous. I mean, of course, anything has to be maintained, but we try and minimize it, right? The materials, like if we had painted surfaces everywhere, plaster and paint, after 2 years in this climate, it looks bad. It's stained and it's growing mold. And whereas if you treat the concrete, the off form or the bricks we treat it with a clear sealer, and there's quite a long lifespan on that. It used to be 5 years, but I think the latest products would be 8 years or 10. So you don't have to do it very often, and it's quite easy to do because it's clear. It's clear matte sealer. You don't even know it's there. The only reason this is interesting actually, because when we towards the end of the projects, the contractor says, yeah, I've sealed all this, I've sealed that. We just go around with a cup of water, a bottle of water, and just throw a bit on. And if it's been sealed, it will be like going onto a surface of a mirror or onto glass. It will form these baubles of water, these balls of water. But if it's not been sealed, it immediately soaks up like a sponge, the concrete or the brick. We know immediately. And so it's very interesting. Often they'll try and kid you, we've done this, we've done that, and then you just throw a bit of water on and it's not done. So it's very easy. It's very easy to construct this, and it's very practical.
John, Aisha is asking if there's an ebook of your publication Factory in the Forest.
No, there isn't. Not at the moment.
Okay.
I believe. I don't know whether the publisher is going to bring it out or not. I don't know, to be honest.
Okay.
So I can't answer that one.
I think Aisha, you have to buy the physical copy. Okay.
Right.
Zheng Yi has a question. Mr. John, very clear and exciting work you have done. Just want to ask how you feel about the ratio of garden building index in Malaysia. Do you think it's lacking, and how do we improve the ratings and the amount of green buildings in Malaysia?
I like that question also. That's a good question, because what I would do, I will put they like to tick boxes, right? People who do this a lot. And there's nothing wrong with this. Of course, it's a good thing, really. But I don't believe that it really produces the green buildings that we could produce, right? It becomes a bit of a box ticking exercise in some ways. I'm not criticizing it because it is a good thing, but it could be improved. Maybe if we had a box to tick for psychological well-being, things like that. That's what I would like to see. Definitely, I'd like to see that. Now, how we assess that is anybody's guess, but that's what I would like to see. And I think the drawback with not just the green building, all of them, BREEAM, LEED, whatever, all over the world, they have these indexes. I think there is a danger that there's a bit of a lack of understanding of what makes a green building. And I think some people, the danger is that maybe some people think it's about ticking boxes, and it's not ticking boxes, So just be aware of that. I mean, none of our clients go for it, to be honest. I mean, the Factory in the Forest would have, God no, it would have platinum plus or something like that, because it is very, very low energy building. Uses half the energy of a typical factory. Was that one? But the client wasn't interested in it. He was just interested in getting a low energy building for his workforce. But so I don't think any of them actually have. So yeah, it's just the way it's been. I'm nothing against it. If a client wants it, that's fine also. But that's what I think. We should have a box to tick for psychological well-being. Yeah.
I think, John, one final question from the student side. Okay, they're asking if you have incorporated green walls or green facade in your design. If not, is there any particular reason?
Yes, I don't like them, to be honest, is the simple answer. I mean, some people like them, that's fine, but I personally don't. I think there's a lot of maintenance involved, and generally after a year or two, people give up and they die often. This is what I see around anyway. Of course, there'll be cases where they don't, but I don't like it. It seems a bit unnatural to me. It's like I don't like putting plants inside a building. It seems a bit unnatural to me. I like them outside. But on the facade, it just seems, no, I don't like it. I don't like it, actually. So I don't do it, no. That's not to say that I might not in the future, so don't ring me up and say, hey, I don't, at the moment, I've not seen the need for it, and I don't really like it. It seems a bit unnatural. And I think there is a maintenance issue, honestly, as well with it. So,
Probably if you're okay, one or two more questions from the I haven't asked the lecturers. Probably Jess, if you have anything, and or Faswin, because both of them are into sustainability. I'm sure they have any some questions. Jess, Faswin, yeah, or Caleb. Yeah.
Not questions, but I think, John, you have come to us at the sort of right time, yeah, to inspire the students. So, you know, thank you to Prince and Eric as well, I think, for inviting you just at the right time, because I think a few of us tutors are involved in this sustainable theme for our students. So I think, you know, besides, you know, inspiring, I think more importantly in sharing that value system, I think if the students can understand that it's about having a value system, you know, of whatever it is, you know, and pushing that through. In your case here, the sense of honesty. So I don't really have a question, I guess, you know, so, but I totally appreciate your, the values that you're trying to put across in terms of honesty, respect for the environment, and respect for the people who use the space. And that can come in many shapes and form. And this is your architecture, but the students have got to make it their own. Yeah?
yes, they have. I mean, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. The you know, when I give crits or talks to students, I'm like a broken record, I think, honestly, because I always maintain that, you know, if you don't start to evolve your philosophy now, you never will. Once you get out into the working world, it's, you know, I think it's extremely hard to do it. You've got to have at least a direction where you're going in architecture. What's important to you in architecture as a student, developing that. You know, this comes back to meaning. You know, there must be a reason why you do things, why you make that mark on the paper like that and not like that. You know, you need to explain to yourself these things. I believe you do. I mean, maybe not to the nth degree where you just go around in circles, but you've got to sort of have this direction going this way. You can try things and you experiment, sure, but you must know what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's the difference between a good building and a bad building, I think. And, you know, good art and bad art. You know, when you see a painting and you can understand that there's the soul of the artist is in that painting, then it means something to you. You know, and that's what they need to be doing. They need to be beginning that journey. It's a life journey. I mean, it's really a life journey. As I said, it's a vocation. It's not a job architecture, as we know. I don't think, not if you're practicing it. It's tough, and you've got to be prepared for some toughness. And it's easy to say these things, but I believe it. Yeah, and that's where I've tried to follow.
If there's a question, non-architecture, I guess, how has your life or your childhood sort of shaped or influenced your philosophy or your outlook in architecture? Because what you have shared with us today is something that many of us, I guess, in Asia can resonate with. And that was how our grandparents naturally lived. That we today, I think, particularly the students today are completely detached with the natural environment. And we see this in the kampong, we see this in, you know, even the in the urban dwellings, right? We see the same, you know, sort of principles. So how has your life or your childhood shaped?
Well, that's a big question. Wow. Yes. Well, very brief.
We've never actually sat down to chat. So I'm very interested. I think many of the other tutors have met you personally.
Yeah. Well, very briefly. I mean, of course, your formative years do form you. There's no doubt, as we know, right? And I mean, as a child, I wasn't that interested academically. Later in life, later secondary school, university. But, as a small child, I just wanted to paint and make models. Seriously, that's all I wanted to do. So that's what I did, essentially. So, I mean, I think that was important to me to get that sort of three-dimensional visual. I was a visual person. I would notice things. Lots of it. My mum used to say to me, you know, I had two sisters who are older than me, and I used to notice all sorts of things. And I think that's sort of important as well, you know, because as an architect, you do notice things. You notice when things are out of the ordinary a bit or whatever like that. And I think that's great. But later, I went to a creative school of architecture. That was a big plus. At that time, at least it was. And that we had some really good tutors. And my landscape tutor in particular was very inspiring. And so I learned a lot. And I think probably the landscape connection probably stems from, not sure, but it probably stems from that area, that interest in landscape and the importance of it in terms of architecture. And then going later, because it was a good school, we had a lot of interesting lecturers, and you know, I went to join Paolo Soleri in the Arizona desert building Arcosanti. If you don't know that, look at Arcosanti. Some of you will know, I think. Things like that, they all shape you. And then traveling, I used to take myself off on one-man band architectural tours. I saved a bit of money when I was after I left school. Yeah, after I left School of Architecture. So and I'd go off for a month or 2 weeks, whatever time I could afford and money, traveling around Europe, you know, Scandinavia, visit buildings there or visit whatever. And this is all, you know, it's all experience in the bank of life, if you like, all these things. You don't know what it's going to do to you, but you just know it's important to you. And then going to India and working India and working in Ahmedabad, working with Doshi a bit later still, and then with Corbusier and Louis Kahn buildings all around me. It was just amazing. And not just those buildings, but just these simple buildings in India as well, the layering of space, things like that. So all these things, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but anyway, these are things that have been important to me over the years. When I look back, the things I can sort of readily think of, there's probably a lot of other things, but I would say those things. I was just always just interested in making things. I still am. I still build physical models all the time because I need it. Perhaps some people don't need it, and that's great, but I need it. I need it to see the site, and I need it to see space and things like that. So yeah, I am a model maker. Okay.
Thanks, John. Yeah.
Thanks, Paswin. Jazz, probably final question for John, if you have, yeah.
Hi, John. Thank you, Prince. I don't have so much of a question, but I like the way you approach both schemes that you showed. One is the factory and one of the houses using the lots of planting. Number two, I like most is this hovering first layer of roof, you know, hovering over the structural roof. I believe that will cut down so much of the solar penetration onto the building envelope, and therefore cut down the solar gain inside the spaces tremendously. And I like very much that you have given so much thought in the natural ventilation. And I also love the design language, where it is a very modernist in terms of the style and approach. And what I like most is the soul and passion that you have given, you put into the design, as you said it. I personally feel that I can live in the factory myself. But my question is, I'd like to know numerically whether there are figures that maybe in a separate discussion, I suppose, how much actually we can save by using all these passive strategies in terms of energy and also money. And number two is, I sincerely believe that having those numerical info or data will help all of us and future students, I suppose, to be able to replicate the techniques or the strategies and hoping for similar energy saving or passive design results. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments there. Appreciate that. Well, it's the canopy is amazing how it cuts out the heat. You don't need even to measure it, although we have done. But you can walk, like for instance, factory in the forest. You can walk in a blaze in the heat of the day, out, into the compound, into the site, into the car park, and then you walk under the canopy, and immediately you are, I don't know how many degrees. Actually, I can't remember how many degrees, but we did measure it. So, but you feel it so much. And that it is, that, and then inside the building, this is cutting out the heat inside the building, reducing air conditioning, etc., as well. So yes, definitely it works. Keeps the building cooler. Of course, persuading client to pay for that is not always easy. We managed to do it partially with the office one or the airport one. But to cost saving, we had to cut out the center part, but we managed to we managed to shade the facades and some of the roof gardening, maybe half the roof garden, but we had to cut, value engineering. We had to cut, like everything, we have to do that. We accept this, of course. There's limited budgets all the time, but you just try and push it as much as possible. The factory in the forest, though, I'm not sure your question is purely related to passive or overall, but how to measure passive, I just explained. Definitely we can be cooler with these sort of things and other things we've not even thought of yet. But we have actually done studies, or the studies have been done for the factory in the forest in terms of energy usage and how much money it saves every year for the client. It's in the millions. Actually, it's amazing, with their reduced electricity bill, etc. So, and that's, just in terms of monetary saving, but in terms of psychological and staff, keeping staff, having low staff turnover, putting a figure on this also is important as well. I mean, there was the client commissioned a study for all its staff, anonymous. It was anonymous, and they asked questions about how are you in this building, all questions like this. And it was overwhelmingly positive. And then they wrote comments. There was a comment column, and some of the comments were really eye-opening. What they wrote. A lot of these are from Indonesia. There's some of these line workers, or Bangladesh, as well as Malaysia, of course. But they were saying things like, I'm working away from home, but coming to this factory, and I can meet my friends here in the garden and talk, in my break, and things like this. You can't put a price on things like this, I think. So these things are really important. As I said earlier, we spend 90% nearly of our time inside buildings. It's an amazing figure. I was staggered when I found this out. 90, but when you think about it, it's probably true. 90% of our time, of our life, inside buildings. So we better make them as best we can as architects. That's all. That's what I believe.
Can I have a quick question, Prince?
Yeah, yes. Bang, yeah.
Hi, John.
Yeah, hi.
I understand the entire project is about 15,000 square meter. And that is it, including the administration building where you have the canopy over and you have a manufacturing portion.
Yes, about 160,000 square feet, correct? Something like that.
Yeah. So how big, may I know, is that administration block that you have the forest?
The office area is only about 20,000, I think, on about 20,000 square feet, maybe 25, around, I think 20 from memory.
All right,
Yeah.
great,
Quite
great.
small.
Because I want the student to know the scale of thing. Because if it's about 20,000 square feet, that's exactly the size of building they are doing now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So they have a better, now they have a better reference, like it's possible for 20,000 square feet to do all these in their building. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
Thanks, Bang. Thanks, John. I think that will be our final question. But I think before we end this session, of course, we would like to thank, on behalf of the School of Architecture, Building and Design, I would like to thank Mr. John Bulcock for being our third distinguished guest speaker for the ADP lecture series. It is our pleasure and our honor to have you this afternoon. I know you're quite busy with your work and your schedules. Thank you for taking a time off. And also I would like to thank Eric for inviting and making this possible for today. I think before we end, I would like our hardworking class representative to take a group photo. Okay. If you're okay, John, okay, a group photo for this moment, okay? To remember this moment, okay, Jesse?
I'll take my glasses off.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, Prince and Eric. I'm always happy to give a talk, so thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks.
Okay.
John, we look forward to seeing you on the final review online.
Okay. You let me know.
Okay. Thank you so
well,
much.
I look
Jesse?
forward. I look forward to coming back to talk in person. This is what I miss.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
talking online is not the same, as we know. But anyway, I enjoyed it today with you all. So thanks for inviting me. Okay.
We're crossing our fingers that hopefully next semester we'll back on campus and
Okay.
everything is back to normal. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Jesse,
great.
our class rep will take the photo. I think Jesse, it's yours probably. Okay. Give your classmates instructions to switch on the cameras.
Are we done?
Oh, not yet, John. They're switching on their cameras. Probably another 2 minutes. Yeah, to join you. Yeah, for today.
I'll take it in another 5, 4, 3, 1. Okay, page 1 first. 1, 2, 3. Move on to page 2. 1, 2, 3. Okay. That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Thanks, John. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Good to
Thank
see
you,
you all.
John.
And yeah, I look forward to see you in the future. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, John.
Uh, uh,